Reformed thinking. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we take some of history's most significant sources and try to synthesize them into knowledge you can really get a handle on. And today we're doing a very specific, very intensive deep dive. We're looking at the conclusion of Christ's work of redemption through the vision of one of the great minds of the First Great Awakening, Jonathan Edwards.
That's right. Our focus is really on the grand finale. We're moving past the church age, past the application of grace in our own time, and looking straight at the ultimate success of Christ's purchase. We're drawing straight from his major work, A History of the Work of Redemption, where he lays out, step by step, the general judgment and the bestowal of eternal glory.
So our mission, for you listening, is to synthesize Edwards's very meticulous chronological account of that last great day. It's a clear progression, isn't it? It moves from this current age of grace through a kind of cosmic crisis and into the final eternal state of glory. We really want to get into how he structures history's final moment.
And to do that, to really grasp the scale of it, we first have to understand his framework for what he calls the success of Christ's purchase. He says it's twofold. There's a success that consists in grace and a success that consists in glory. If you miss that distinction, the whole thing doesn't quite line up.
Okay, so let's set that baseline then. Success in grace. That's what's happening now. Wrought during the life of the Christian church, through the means of grace preaching, sacraments, the work of the Spirit. That's the redemption we experience today.
Yes, exactly. Grace is the necessary work, but it's preliminary. It's the whole sanctifying process that makes the elect able or meet for their final inheritance. But glory, that's the crowning act, and that's accomplished chiefly at the Day of Judgment. Edwards is very clear that the bestowal of glory is the one point toward which all of history has been moving.
And he also says this final stage is the true salvation and redemption in the fullest sense of those words, right?
Absolutely. He points to Hebrews 9:28, where Christ appears a second time unto salvation. It's the moment the church is fully and finally saved. He also calls it redemption, citing Ephesians on the day of redemption, and Luke, your redemption draweth nigh. The payment was made at the cross, but the final, complete delivery of the purchased possession, the whole glorified church, that only happens on that day.
That brings up a huge question about historical perspective. I mean, we spend so much time analyzing the high points of church history, the conversion of Constantine, the Reformation, future revivals, the fall of Antichrist. If Edwards sees the bestowal of glory as the crowning act, what does he make of all that came before?
Well, this is the key insight that kind of reshapes your whole value system for history. He says everything that comes before that day, all the glorious things, the peace under Constantine, the fall of Antichrist, even the means of grace themselves, it's all just preparatory. It exists for one reason, to make the elect ready for glory. And his language here is, well, it's striking. He calls all of those earthly spiritual achievements but images and shadows of the glory to come.
Images and shadows. That's a powerful statement, especially when you think that he personally witnessed the Great Awakening. He's saying even the greatest outpouring of the Spirit on earth is just a shadow cast by the Son of final glory.
It's a massive theological point. It means that the value of our current spiritual life, while very real, is by its very design temporary. It's meant to be replaced by something infinitely greater. It shifts the whole center of gravity of redemptive history onto those final cosmic events of the general judgment.
Okay, so if the general judgment is the very purpose toward which providence has been steering the whole universe, then the stage is set. Let's move into the detailed steps Edwards lays out. We'll start with part one, the glorious summons. And this begins with Edwards' point 1, Christ's second glorious appearance. What's the immediate scene on earth just before this happens?
Edwards paints a picture of extreme tension. It's always darkest before the dawn in his view of redemption. He says Christ appears at the very moment the wicked are enjoying their greatest earthly success. He says they are reveling in their wickedness and specifically compassing the holy city, ready to destroy it.
So it's that classic picture of suddenness. They're in the middle of their persecution or just, celebrating themselves, eating, drinking, scoffing at the idea of a judge. And then the crow at midnight comes. They are caught completely off guard.
And the visual contrast that follows is just absolute. It reverses the entire story of the first advent. You have to remember that comparison. At his first coming, he's born in a stable, a root out of a dry ground, disguised, afflicted, hanging on a cross with soldiers mocking him. That was Christ in his humiliation.
But now, this is the glorification.
Yes, the ultimate reversal. Christ appears in his perfected, glorified human body, and he's radiating what Edwards calls the glory of his Father. He's not alone this time. He's attended by all his holy angels, principalities, powers. He uses that biblical language. thousands ministering to him. His simplest attendants are angels, beings of immense glory themselves.
The scale is just astronomical,
Oh.
and it's visible to everyone. Edward says the sheer light of this event is so intense that the sun in a clear sky will be but darkness in comparison of it. It's an undeniable, universal event that fulfills Revelation. Every eye shall see him, no more hiding.
And this arrival has immediate drastic effects on everyone, splitting them instantly into two psychological states. For the wicked, their parties, their drinking, their schemes, it all just stops. Instantly, the whole army surrounding the saints just falls apart. They drop their weapons.
Their whole tone changes, from laughter and scoffing to something much darker.
Right. Their laughter gives way to hideous, hellish yelling. Edwards describes their faces changing from pride to ghastly terror and amazement, and they're seized with trembling and chattering of teeth. They're face to face with their judge, who is infinitely holy, infinitely powerful, and whom they despised.
That's the moment they realize it's not just a moral reckoning, but the very person whose blood they trampled on.
Their fear isn't just a fear of punishment. It's the dreadful sight of God's wrath made visible against their unrepentant souls.
But on the other hand, for the saints, this same sight is the greatest possible joy. They're delivered instantly from all fear, from the very persecutors who are about to destroy them. It's that moment from Luke 21. They lift up their heads.
They see infinite love in his face, even in the middle of all that majesty, and that sight floods them with gladness. Their expressions change from sorrow to exceedingly joyful and triumphant. The temporary success of the wicked is just dismantled in a second.
So that sets the visual stage. After this appearance, Edwards moves to point two, the sound of the great trumpet and universal resurrection. If the first point is the visual signal, this is the audible one.
Right. The signal is the blast of the last trumpet. He calls it a mighty sound which shakes the earth. It's so powerful that in 1 Thessalonians it's called the voice of the archangel. This sound is the command for the dead of all ages to rise.
The scope of that is hard to even imagine. Edwards asks you to think about the number of the dead. I mean, how many people have lived and died since Adam and Eve? The world will be physically fuller of resurrected bodies than at any point in its history. Every grave opens, the sea gives up its dead.
It creates this grand assembly of all humanity. Everyone who ever lived appears on the earth at once. Think about it. Adam and Eve, Abel, the prophets, the apostles, the martyrs, saints from every single age. And he makes a special point to include those from what he calls the wilderness state.
That's a concept tied to his reading of Revelation, isn't it?
It is. It's about that time, especially during the reign of Antichrist, which for Edwards was the papacy, when the true church was persecuted, hidden, driven into obscurity. Even those believers from the darkest times of persecution will rise to join this assembly.
And the enemies rise too. This isn't just for the faithful. The resurrection of the wicked is just as necessary for the judgment. Wicked heathens, Jews, Mahometans, papists, hypocrites, sensualists, heretics, deists, persecutors, everyone.
And then the final step in this stage is the change of the living. And it's a dual change to fit both groups for their eternal destiny. The bodies of the living wicked men are changed to make them fit for eternal torment.
That's a critical point. Their bodies have to be made indestructible, but at the same time capable of endless suffering. It's a horrifying transformation.
Precisely. Justice demands that the body, which was part of the sin, has to be part of the punishment, and that punishment has to be eternal. So their physical form is altered to have this terrible kind of immortality.
But for the saints, the change is gloriously the opposite. Their bodies are changed in the twinkling of an eye to be like Christ's own glorious body.
They put off all weakness, all dullness, every trace of decay that afflicted them since the fall. They gain incredible strength, beauty, activity, and incorruptible, unfading glory. Their bodies are made incapable of pain or sickness forever.
And this physical transformation is a huge benchmark in redemption, one we probably overlook when we just focus on the legal judgment. This is the completion of redemption in a physical sense.
It absolutely is. Before this day, redemption was incomplete. The souls of the elect were in glory, yes, but their bodies were still under the curse of the grave. Now all the bodies of the saints are saved and glorified with their souls. All the elect are redeemed in the whole man, soul, and body, in perfect eternal union. That's the physical fulfillment of Christ's purchase.
It makes the day of judgment a kind of cosmic biological restoration. The very matter of the elect is finally perfected.
It's a comprehensive recreation, and it's an immediate global separation of the two destinies, even before a single sentence is spoken.
That distinction brings us right into part two, the great separation and setting the bar. So everyone's resurrected, everyone's present, and the physical division has to be made. Edwards calls this first stage, point 3, ascension of the saints and arraignment of enemies.
The visual here is just unmatched. Once the dead saints are raised and the living are changed, the entire church, millions of saints from all ages, they all ascend at the same time. They are caught up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Christ's throne is fixed in the airy region, visible to everyone below, but not touching the defiled earth.
So the saints are literally taking their leave. That massive simultaneous ascent is the church's final farewell to this world. Edwards describes it as their everlasting leave of this earth, which he calls a scene of trouble and sorrow, where the devil reigned and Christ was cruelly used.
They will never set foot on it again. And this completes redemption in another major way. The church is perfectly and forever delivered from this present evil world. The ascent makes that separation physically undeniable.
Before this, saints and wicked lived in the same towns, worshipped in the same buildings sometimes. Now all that ambiguity is gone. The whole church is seen rising, a mighty cloud of them, joining Christ at his right hand.
And this ascent allows for the perfect union of the church. They were separated by time, distance, death, even heaven and earth. Now they are gathered together into one society, all gathered under their head, never to be separated again.
But that leaves the massive body of the wicked still on the ground.
Exactly. They become the audience and the defendants. All wicked men and devils are gathered at Christ's left hand, stuck on the earth. They're held there, waiting for arraignment.
And this is where the great cosmic enemy, Satan, is finally dragged forward.
Yes, this is the dramatic centerpiece. The devil who opposed redemption, who instigated the crucifixion, who has tormented the saints for thousands of years. He is dragged up out of hell, and he stands trembling before the same Jesus he tried to destroy. The public humiliation he's always dreaded has finally come.
And the reversal of status is just amazing. Edwards doesn't just say Satan trembles before Christ, but that the saints themselves will judge him.
It fulfills that promise in 1 Corinthians 6. Know ye not that we shall judge angels. And this isn't just symbolic. It's a declaration of Christ's victory through his mystical body. Edwards ties it right back to Genesis 3 or C5, where the seed of the woman would bruise the serpent's head. The saints, as Christ's body, get to participate in that crushing defeat.
I wonder, does he clarify what that judgment looks like? I mean, when the saints judge angels, are they handing down sentences, or is it something else?
Well, in the Reformed view, and certainly for Edwards, it's an authoritative declarative role. The saints' judgment is their affirmation and agreement with Christ's perfect sentence. It shows that they, who fought these spiritual enemies on earth, now completely approve of their righteous condemnation. It's their complete victory.
And along with the devil are all the human persecutors. Edwards lines them up from history.
Oh yes, the whole array of enemies. Proud scribes, Pharisees, Pontius Pilate, the mocking soldiers, heathen emperors, persecuting popes, Gog and Magog, all of them standing right before the judgment seat.
The role reversal is total. Christ stood as a criminal before Pilate. The saints were condemned by their rulers. Now, the same saints sit as judges, and their enemies have to look up and see the glory they've arrived at, the very people they so cruelly despised.
It's the ultimate righting of all wrongs, and it moves us right into the great revelation of truth.
Which is point 4, vindication and manifestation of truth. The judgment seat isn't about discovering facts. It's about making hidden truth visible to the whole universe.
That's the essence of it. The saints, who were slandered and treated like the filth and offscouring of the earth, they are fully vindicated. Their reputations are cleansed before everyone.
And they first appear clothed in the glorious robe of Christ's righteousness. That's their legal standing. But Edwards goes beyond the legal, doesn't he? He talks about their inherent holiness.
Precisely. Their actual sanctified holiness is made manifest. All their good works, even the secret ones, the private acts of charity or patient endurance that only God saw, they're all brought to light. God will bring forth their righteousness as the light. It will be obvious to the whole gathered world that these were truly the excellent of the earth.
So there's no more ambiguity about the character of the redeemed. What about the wicked? What's the corresponding revelation for them?
It's exposure and total shame. All their wickedness, their hidden motives, their pride, their malice, their hatred of true religion, it's all set forth in its proper colors. Nothing is hidden.
Edwards uses that really chilling image. The very hearts of the wicked shall be turned inside out before the bright light of that day.
Yes, and that perfect knowledge is necessary so that the justice of their condemnation is undeniable. Things said in secret, done in the dark, they will be proclaimed for angels and men. Hypocrites will have their masks torn off, and the righteous who couldn't get a fair hearing on earth will now have their cause declared before the great judge. This total manifestation of truth sets up the justice of the sentences that are about to come.
Okay, we've gone through the appearance, the resurrection, the separation, and the manifestation of truth. Now we get to part 3, finality and consummation, starting with Edwards point V, pronouncement of sentence. This is the definitive word.
This is the moment Christ's authority is exercised in two very different ways. He first passes the blessed sentence on the church at his right hand, and it's delivered with infinite love.
The words are familiar. Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Edwards focuses on the emotional impact, that this voice will cause every heart to just flow with joy.
It's the moment of public honor for those who were despised. Christ publicly justifies the millions who were condemned by persecutors. He puts a crown of glory on their heads, so they shine forth as the sun, visible to all their enemies below.
A public glorification. But right after this act of love comes the condemnation, the sentence on the wicked at his left hand.
And that sentence is simple and devastating. Depart, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels.
Edwards describes the horror of this moment in, well, unforgettable terms. The sheer weight of eternal wrath in that sentence strikes them with unimaginable horror.
He says every syllable will be more terrible than a stream of lightning through their hearts. And the finality of it drives them to immediate despair. It leads to this terrifying scene on earth, horrible shrieking, queering, gnashing of teeth.
It's important to note, too, that the righteous saints concur in this sentence, even the martyrs. They confirm its perfect justice.
That confirmation is vital. The condemnation isn't just a decree. It's a global recognition by everyone. Angels, saints, and the contenders condemn themselves of their deserved and irreversible fate. And that seals the judgment.
So with the sentences delivered, the two groups are ready for their eternal destinies. This brings us to the two simultaneous events in Edwards points 6 and 7, ascension to the highest heavens and the fiery consummation. The fate of the church and the fate of the old world are decided at the same time.
Let's look at the second ascension first. Christ and all his saints, now glorified in body and soul, immediately leave this lower world and ascend toward the highest heavens, the eternal paradise of God.
And this ascension, Edwards says, is far more glorious than Christ's first one after his resurrection. Why is that?
Because the first time it was Christ alone ascending as the head. The second time it's Christ ascending with his entire mystical body, the whole elect church. They ascend in triumph, their warfare is over.
And the enemies, who are left behind on the condemned earth, are forced to watch this.
That's their final torment before the fire. They see this triumphant sight, millions of people they once despised rising in glory, and they hear their triumphant songs as the church leaves the accursed world forever.
And once Christ and the church are a safe distance away, and that detail is key, they are removed before the judgment falls, then the lower world is set on fire. This is the fiery consummation.
This is the annihilation of the old cosmos. Edwards pulls heavily from 2 Peter here about how the heavens and the earth which are now are kept in store, reserved unto fire.
And this is not a metaphorical fire, it's a literal, overwhelming destruction.
Absolutely. The fire will come either from heaven or from the bowels of the earth, or both, just like the flood. The entire lower world becomes a universal furnace of fierce, raging heat.
The intensity is just hard to get your head around.
He describes it in terms of cosmic destruction. The heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. He even references Deuteronomy, saying the fire will burn unto the lowest hell, consuming the earth to its very center.
Why does he emphasize that it burns unto the lowest hell? Is that just a metaphor for how hot it is?
It's more than that. It speaks to the theological completeness of the vengeance. The earth itself, the scene of rebellion in Satan's kingdom, is now judged and totally purified by wrath. The phrase means God's judgment gets to the very core of material creation. Nothing of the old cursed order is left untouched.
And this furnace becomes the final fixed place of eternal torment for the wicked and for the devil.
Correct. Here, persecutors suffer torments far beyond anything they could inflict on the saints they burned at the stake. They now face the infinite, direct wrath of the judge.
And the bodies of the wicked have that terrible immortality we talked about earlier.
Yes, Edwards makes that horrifying but necessary theological point. Their bodies burn, and they never be consumed. This is the perfection of eternal punishment. He says their prior suffering in hell was like an imprisonment compared to the full execution that follows it.
This ensures the punishment fits the scale of the offense against an infinite God.
It does. And this is where the devil gets his full punishment, in the very world that used to be his kingdom. The fiery end of the earth is now the place of his everlasting torment. And this perfectly accomplishes the final design of redemption, putting Christ's enemies completely under his feet.
So the stage is now completely cleared. The righteous are gone, the wicked are in eternal torment, and the old creation is gone. This sets the scene for Edward's point 8, entry into glory and the deliverance of the kingdom.
This is the moment the whole purpose of redemption's history is realized. While the lower world is burning, the entire church enters with Christ into the eternal paradise of God. The gates of heaven open for their triumphant entrance.
And Christ presents them to the Father. He says, in effect, "Here am I and the children which thou hast given me."
And Edwards describes this presentation in detail. Christ tells the Father he has perfectly cleansed them in his blood, delivered them from the fall and all their enemies, and brought them home in perfect holiness, shining with the Father's own image. They are trophies of his victory.
The Father accepts them, welcomes them to their eternal inheritance with a more glorious manifestation of his love than they ever experienced before.
And this is the most perfect sense of the marriage of the Lamb. The millennium on earth was like a marriage, but this is the real consummation. The New Jerusalem, Revelation says, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband.
They enter heaven for an everlasting wedding day. The bridegroom and bride rejoice together in a state of blessedness that will never, ever end.
And at this point, the whole work of redemption is declared finished. The top stone of the building is laid. The church is in the harbor of complete and eternal glory. All Christ's enemies are under his feet. All the Father's promises to Christ are accomplished, and all the hopes of the saints are fulfilled.
It's a definitive end to the preparatory state. The glory they knew on earth is now seen for what it was, a faint shadow of her consummate glory in heaven.
The glory of the Trinity is maximized as well. Christ the Redeemer is glorified in his completed body. God the Father is glorified in him, his justice satisfied, his mercy magnified, and the Holy Ghost is glorified in the perfection of his work on the church's hearts.
And along with this glorious entry comes the completion of the new creation.
Yes, the new heaven and new earth is completely finished after the old one is destroyed by fire. The former things are passed away, and everything is fixed in a glorious permanent state for all eternity.
Which brings us to a really crucial and kind of nuanced theological point from Edwards, based on 1 Corinthians 15, the deliverance of the kingdom to the Father. If Christ is going to reign forever, what does it mean that he delivers up the kingdom?
This is a really important clarification in Reformed doctrine. When Christ began the work of redemption, a specific kingdom, a mediatorial commission, was given to him by the Father. He took on the unique job of managing the entire universe in order to accomplish redemption. He was the Father's vice-regent for that specific task.
So delivering up the kingdom doesn't mean Christ stops being God or stops reigning.
Not at all. Scripture is clear on his eternal reign. Luke 1 says, "Of his kingdom there shall be no end." Daniel 7 says his dominion is an everlasting dominion.
So the distinction is purely functional. It's tied to the purpose of the historical process.
Precisely. The commission ends when the design is accomplished. Since the task of gathering the elect, defeating their enemies, and bringing them to glory is now done, that specialized management function is formally delivered back to God the Father. Christ continues to reign as God and as head of his church forever, but that special office tied to overcoming enemies is concluded.
That brings the entire history of the work of redemption to its most perfect theological end.
Yes, we've traced the whole story from the preparatory stages of grace through the cataclysm of the general judgment to the eternal state where the church is secure, the enemies are subdued, and the full purpose of the triune God is realized.
That was an incredibly detailed step-by-step account. We started with the age of grace, and we've ended with the church entering complete eternal glory. It paints a picture where all of history moves with a purpose.
Edwards really did map out this progression to highlight the huge scope of Christ's triumph over sin, Satan, death, and hell. It confirms that history isn't random, but moves with sovereign certainty toward this final, glorious end.
And everything that happens in our lives now, even the greatest spiritual blessings we get, they are all temporary, all designed to prepare us for that moment when we put on incorruptible, unfading glory. They're shadows pointing to the real substance.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to carry with you. Edwards shows us that the final state of perfection requires the demolition of the old order by fire. The entire world, the whole scene of redemption's progress, has to be consumed before the highest glory can be enjoyed.
So if God says the entire material world, the context for the fall and the struggle, is unfit for the final state, what does that say about the preparatory nature of even the very best spiritual victories we experience in this life?
Consider the things you value most right now. Your spiritual disciplines, your ministry, your knowledge. What specific shadows in your current life are you anticipating will give way to that ultimate substance of glory when you see the judge ascending with his perfected church? That's the scale Edwards forces us to confront.
We hope this deep dive has equipped you with a more informed and detailed vision of the powerful, inevitable hope that is set before us. Until next time.